Hello HND students, so this is John here. I'm just going to go over the research project review, particularly task 4 and 3. Okay, so task 4 for research project is your actual final paper for the research project, and task 3 is your evaluation. So just to remind you that the research project is due in very soon, the 15th of May, so it's not long, not far away at all, when it's all needed. So your final task requires you to submit a final paper of around 2,500 words, okay, which will be go inside of your research folder. Just before I kind of go over the critical bits with you, what we need is when you're doing your research project is obviously you're going to need to have your core books for your research project. So I think you need between about 6 to 8 core books, at least 2 or 3 journals to help you with your research project. So you probably have like favourite 2 or 3 books that will really help you significantly, but on a whole you need at least 7 to 8 books and a good few journals along with some websites. When you're reading them, you're going to have to make sure you try and have a critical eye when you're reading a book. So obviously, as we always do, make sure you read the title carefully, look at the introduction, the conclusion, because it can be a very time-consuming activity, as you found up to now. Another little suggestion as well is for your books, try and group them. So have a group of authors who agree the same perspective about your research project and another group of authors who don't, so that can help you with your critical writing skills. You're going to also keep in mind obviously the purpose of your project. So what's your research question? Do not lose sight of that, and I cannot stress enough how important that is, because you don't want to be writing about something that's got nothing to do with your research question. As well, you need to obviously make sure you have your folder together. So I've got very high expectations of what your folder should look like. So it needs to have a contents page at the front, 4 or 5 colourful dividers bits, so it's all sectioned up. So at the front you will have your task 1. For task 2 you'll have your logbook and journals. Task 3 you will have your evaluation. Task 4 will be your final paper, and at the back you will have your reference list, your research interviews and all the rest of it, okay, charts and graphs. So please make sure it's very, very organised. You know about your journals, you've got the handing date. Obviously when you write, it's about trying to develop good habits, so obviously keep reading, so you cannot start your final paper if you're not doing your reading. You've got to spend at least a good week doing your reading from your books. You should have all pretty much started this already, given that you've done your methodology, but please bear that in mind when you're doing your project. ALS at the college, okay, so make sure your final paper, your methodology has gone to ALS for proofreading to make sure it's got grammatical flow and it's academic. And as well, for your task 1, going back to your methodology, you must make sure that there's evidence of ethics, reliability and validity in there. I might not stress this enough in your template that I provided on Classroom to you, but this is going to need to be inside your work. So for example, how you manage confidentiality when interviewing somebody, what you're going to think about there. What about ethics? In terms of about sensitivity of data, you know, in there, is there a code of conduct you need to be governed by when doing your research project? How you know your work is reliable? So please just give them some consideration when you're doing that, because I might not have emphasised that enough in your template and when you're doing your methodology there. Okay, you should, if you've got any problems, just look at your PowerPoints from the lectures that we've done earlier in October last year. And a useful book that'll help you with this is the actual Tilmouth and Quillington here, Level 5 Leadership and Health and Social Care. It has got a chapter dedicated to research project in there, which is really, really easy to understand. So please, if you have any problems, look at this and it will help you. Obviously the Gilbert here as well is really, really helpful, but obviously much more academic in there. So just a few little small things there. Okay, so just going through the actual the project itself. Again, reading. Okay, I think there's a theme permeating through here for this little vlog about you having to read your books and your journals. Okay, so you've got the word count 2,500 words. You've got to have a good interpretation of analysis. You've got to make sure it's linked to your research question. The who, the what, the why, and the when, and the how. Needs to be structured for your paragraph. I remember when I was doing my dissertation for my social work, I had my mind just went blank. I was pretty much very tired. It was towards the end of my program. My tutor did say that. Think of who, what, why, when, how. It's really, really useful in helping you think about, okay, what is it you need to write for your first paragraph. Each paragraph has to have a clear reasoned argument, so please think about what is your purpose of this paragraph that you want to write about. Okay, so each paragraph should have at least about 200 to 300 words in there, about 500 words per paper. So please think about what is it you want to articulate and argue there in that first paragraph. So a little question here to help you get your teeth into what some top tips for your research project is for your final paper. So a little question here is, what are the core considerations for caring for older people affected by dementia in residential care? Still a little question there, but just to help you think about how you'd respond to that is, you would first of all hopefully have an introduction. You would then maybe think about writing about the history of adult support care for older people. So what happened in the past when older people maybe had dementia or Alzheimer's, or probably maybe one quite well known then, but what was the care arrangements for older people maybe had no family? So back then we had the Poor Law Act, we had the workhouses, so lots of people had to work pretty much right until the end of their life. There's very, very little for them. Okay, so you want to think about what the history of that would be, and for the group of people you're writing about. And then you need to introduce the key concepts. So in this case, obviously we're looking at older people, we're looking at dementia, so we need to about what does it mean to be old, what is dementia, what do we mean by that? Okay, what are the key arrangements for older people? So a little bit of an introduction as to what the key concepts you're going to be writing about, so you understand what we're going to be writing about. And once you've done that, it's pretty much just get straight to the question, I think, answering them. So you need to think about what are the core considerations for older people. So if that is your question, well, you need to know at least 4 or 5 key issues, arguments that you want to write about. So in this case, it could be about loneliness, feeling quite isolated and excluded. It could be about staffing. Might not feel like they've maybe been feeling quite valued by the staff in their residential care home. They might not really understand their needs. It could be about maybe not feeling safe. So if you look at one of the recent reports, the state of adult social care services, I think about 1 in 4 or 5 residential services, 1 in 5 care home staff report feeling not safe in the care homes. They feel cared for, but they don't feel safe. So it's interesting. What the reasons for that? Is it about medications? Is it about not following policy procedures? About safeguarding? Not being taken seriously? It could be obviously about wanting to feel empowered. Maybe don't feel quite valued, empowered. Not seeing evidence of person-centered planning. Okay, issues about privacy. You sometimes see lots of service users share one room in residential homes. Not all of them have their own private bedroom, especially if maybe very, very significantly unwell. That may be the case. So a few little issues to think about. What are the key considerations? So what you will need to do is think back to your interview you had with your tutor, or whoever your interviewee was, about your topic, and look back at your findings. What was permeating through in that interview? What was significant? Because that will help you here. So to sum up, obviously you write your introduction, you'll introduce the history, key concepts, and then you get straight into your paragraphs, looking at core consideration 1, core consideration 2, 3, and so forth throughout your research paper. Okay, once you've obviously done that, you then need to think about your key themes and issues in your final paper. So what is significant here? So looking at what's significant, what's been raised throughout your paper. So one good little tip there is to highlight key bits throughout your literature review, thinking keeps coming up. These authors keep raising this as an argument about loneliness and isolation. Okay, if that keeps cropping up, you need to write about it here. What was you need to be looking at with your interview again? What was significant in that research interview you had with your interviewee? So this bit here is basically where you're just raising the key issues all together and looking at what stands out. And this nicely flows onto the conclusion where you synthesize, you're bringing it all together. You may be looking at comparing it maybe other projects that maybe happened internationally to help. We're looking at lessons where have been learnt over there, how they've managed to resolve some of their problems. Okay, so these parts here, this is where you got your marks here. Okay, so I cannot stress enough how important it is that we do this, because this is showing your ability to synthesize, understand what it is you've researched in your literature review. Okay, so and hopefully it will help you make your new recommendations as well for if you was going to do some further research. What would you do there? Okay, so we've looked at some of the helpful pointers there. I've stressed throughout this where you need to actually do the reading, you need to engage with your literature review, look at your research interview, what you found there. Plan your paper, look back at your methodology for task one, because you've pretty much got the bare bones there as to what you're going to be doing for your final paper. So look back at that, do your reading, get your plan together, use your post-it notes and all the rest of it when you're doing your reading to help you, because obviously you've got probably going to have a lot in your mind, in your head, so the more notes you make, the better. Okay, best of luck, thank you.